So last week we spoke about washing on Shabbat, on Shabbos. I'm going to leave that. That was last week. I hope it was clear. If it's not, I'm happy to take questions later about washing on Shabbos. This week I'd like to really focus on Rechita on Yom Tov, okay, on festivals. A little bit ahead of time. We have Pesach coming up sometime not in the distant future. However, the question of washing on Shabbos is on Yom Tov is similar to Shabbos, but not identical, and it involves different sources, different makores. All right. So over here, what this really starts from a Mishnah in Maseches Beitza, which I think we have over here in source. No, we don't exactly. We have the Gemara here, and we have the Mishnah. Yes, in source in page number 3. Okay, page number 3. We don't have the original source of the Mishnah, but it's brought in the Ritz. Okay, so it's smack in the middle of page 3, right? The Mishnah Beishamai Oimen Lo Yachin Adam Chamin L'Raglov. Right? Beishamai say one mustn't heat water to wash your feet. And again, unless they're fit for drinking. Beis Hillel material, and Beis Hillel permitted, and it's a Madura, you can make a sign for warming yourself up. So this Mishnah, this Machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai is a
good, please, what it's for.
All right, because there's earlier on in the same section, this is the of Beitza. We have the same Machlokes in period creation in the first period of Beitza. Over there, we have a Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel about carrying. Are you allowed to carry your siddur to shul on Yom Tov? All right, over there speaking about carrying your son. Beis Shammai Oisrim, Beis Shammai says it's forbidden. Why? Because it's a malacha. You're not allowed to carry on Shabbos. You're not allowed to carry on Yom Tov. Beis Hillel material. Why? Because of mitoch. All right, mitoch and hutra. The tzorech, because a malacha of carrying is mutter on Yom Tov for the purpose of carrying your food, right? For the purpose of eating, cooking, consumption. So hutra that's why, according to Beis Hillel, you're allowed to carry on Yom Tov, and like we do. And this is the same machlokes, right? Not surprising. Beis Shammai say you're not allowed to heat water for the purpose of washing, and Beis Hillel say it's mutter. And Beis Hillel say it's mutter. All right. That's the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. By the way, Beis Shammai say this should be pointed out. Beis Shammai say that you're also allowed to heat up water for washing if it's raw, meaning if you can use it also for drinking. And that's a special sugya, which I won't get into here now, but it's important to be aware of it. It's a sugya called Marga B'Shiurim. Alright, what does Marga B'Shiurim mean? Doing more of a malacha, which is mutter, for a purpose that you wouldn't be able to do the malacha for, but now that you're doing it anyway, for something permitted, then you're allowed to do it even for something which you wouldn't be allowed to do. For example, all right, an example. It's the first day of Rosh Hashanah, okay? First day of Rosh Hashanah, you're not allowed to cook for the second day of Rosh Hashanah, right? Different Yom Tov. So you're not allowed to cook for the second day of Rosh Hashanah. However, you are allowed to cook for the first day. So you're allowed to cook a large piece of meat, even though you don't need it for your first day, in order to enjoy it also on the second day of Rosh Hashanah.
What if you don't want it at all for the first day?
Then you're not allowed to do it.
So here it seems like if it's for all you for drinking, you could do it for you. It doesn't seem like you need, if you're going to drink, you could do warm water. It seems like if it's good water, you can do it.
So the Gemara here explains that it means boiling a larger amount of water than you would need to drink.
You really want to drink.
You really want to drink, but you don't need the whole amount of water, and then you can boil a larger amount, Marga B'Shiurim, and use the part that you're not drinking for the purpose of washing. That's the sugya of Marga B'Shiurim. It's a nice sugya, but it's not for now. What's interesting for now is that even this machlokes is only about washing for your feet, right? The mission says, Chamel Raglov, only for your feet. And the Gemara, like the Rit brings after Chamel Raglov, to the Shari. Aval Kol Gufay Loi, right? Kol Gufay is not good. Kol Gufay is forbidden. And the question is, why is Kol Gufay forbidden? All right, that's going to be the main question that the sugya of heating for Yom Tov is contingent on. So we already saw last week one answer to this. All right, one answer to this is brought in Tosfos on page 1 that you have. Okay, page 1. The Tosfos that begins with Beischila Matirim. You see it. Beischila Matirim. Tosfos says, "Mashma dafke l'raglov, aber l'tzorech kol gufay lo." Only for your feet, but for your entire body, that's not good enough. It's only good for your feet and not for your entire body. So why not? Says Tosfos, right? Let's skip to whatever the Omer read. It's like the second set of underlining in the Tosfos. The Shem Rivad the Rechita ina ele l'taynu v'asura k'moy mukma v'shem de'ein shomer l'chol nefesh. All right. This is the big principle of mitoch that the Gemara says. The Gemara learns, right? The pasuk says, "Rak hashem yaseh l'chol nefesh." The pasuk says only something which is done for every man. And the Gemara learns out from here that only something which is shaveh l'chol nefesh, meaning it's universal. It's something that everybody takes pleasure in, and not only finicky people, spoiled people. If it's something that only special, spoiled, finicky people take pleasure in, but regular run-of-the-mill, your everyday guy, he doesn't enjoy this. He doesn't. So the classic example that's brought by the Gemara is incense. Even though you're allowed to use fire for all kinds of purposes in Yom Tov, but for incense you're not allowed to. Why? Because incense is a pleasure which is reserved for a cultural elite, and it's not something that everyday people do. And therefore it's also says the same is true about bathing. Bathing is only pleasure for a cultural elite. Normal people don't bathe the whole time. They bathe once a month. They bathe once in a while. This is not normal for most people. And therefore, the hana, the pleasure of bathing, is something which is not shaveh l'chol nefesh. It's not universal.
What's with Beis Shammai's reason? It's not a marvel issue. If you drink it.
According to Beis Shammai, if you're not drinking it, then it's also because Beis Shammai doesn't agree to mitzvah.
If you are drinking it.
If you're drinking it,
you do your whole body?
What do you mean by b'shurim for your whole body? Mm-hmm. Well, clearly not, right? Beis Shammai are only discussing. They're only discussing your feet. They're not discussing the rest of your body. And the reason for that is that something which is heated on Yom Tov, then you wouldn't be able to bathe in it your whole body, and we'll see exactly why in a minute. Okay, you're right. It's a good point. If you're being married with Bishon, what's your problem? We'll see in a minute. Okay, meaning also Beis Shammai would agree that it's only your feet, not the rest of your body. But we're more concerned about Beis Hillel, right? And Beis Hillel are telling us that anything which is beyond washing your face, hands, and feet, according to Tosfos, is not considered shaveh l'chol nefesh. So according to Tosfos, if you heat up this water for the purpose of washing, anything beyond your feet, face, hands, and feet, that would be a D'oraisa prohibition. That's a Torah prohibition. The Rambam doesn't agree to this. I don't know if the Rambam here, but the Rambam is in Perek Aleph of Shabbos and Yom Tov in Halacha Tesai. The Rambam says that when Beis Hillel say that you're only allowed to heat water for your face, hands, and feet, and that's it, that's a D'Rabbanan. That's only Midrabbanan. And he says, why is this also D'Rabbanan? So the Rambam says that this is a part of Gezeras Merchants. Right? You remember we learned last week about this concept of Gezeras Merchat, that Chazal said that bathhouses are a problem. You're not allowed to use a bathhouse on Shabbos. So says the Rambam, this is a similar prohibition. Because we're worried about all the different types of prohibitions that a person might engage in by washing his entire body in a bathhouse, like the Gemara says over here in Shabbos Daf Mem. It's on page 2. We saw it already last week, right? There's a whole issue of bathhouses and so on. So the Rambam says that even if the water was heated up from before Shabbos, right? The real prohibition of Zeras Merchat, right, is irrelevant when the water was heated. Doesn't make a difference whether the water was heated from before Shabbos or whether the water was heated on Shabbos. Doesn't make a difference. If it's on Shabbos, there's another reason why it should be also, because it's a malacha that was done with the water on Shabbos. But even if the water was heated from before Shabbos, and in this case on Yom Tov on Shabbos, doesn't make a difference. Either way, there's a rabbinic prohibition of Gezeras Merchat. So according to the Rambam, the whole problem of heating up this water is a rabbinic prohibition. And the rabbinic prohibition applies to washing your entire body. If you're only washing part of your body, then there wouldn't be a problem. Only your hands, your feet, your face, that's fine. If you're washing your entire body, then that's forbidden because of Gezeras Merchat. And that would be also the pshat in Beis Shammai. Why are Beis Shammai only speaking? Why would they only permit washing your feet and not the rest of the body? Again, because of this rabbinic prohibition against washing your entire body. That would be the Beis Shammai part of it. Again, you could also say maybe Beis Shammai speak about your feet because of Beis Hillel. But the simple understanding is that even according to Beis Shammai, you would have a problem of washing your entire body because of this rabbinic prohibition.
That's the problem with washing, not the heating. There's two parts of it.
Right. But once you're not allowed to wash your entire body, then obviously you wouldn't be able to heat the water for something which is forbidden on Yom Tov. Right? You can only heat the water for purposes that's mutter on Yom Tov. Even things that you can do by means of Marba B'Shiurim, right, is not for doing something which you're not allowed to do now. Right? So, and that we'll see in the Shulchan Aruch in a moment. Something very similar to Beis Shammai we'll see in the Shulchan Aruch. The wording is something. In any case, so we have the bathhouse prohibition, and according to the Rambam, this bathhouse prohibition is not only restricted to bathhouses, right? It applies even outside the bathhouse. Like we'll see in a minute that there's a certain dispute among this in Rishonim, whether this applies outside the regular bathhouse or not. But because the context here of the Mishnah and the Gemara is not specifically in a bathhouse, so it seems clear that according to the Rambam, this applies everywhere. There's a rabbinic prohibition against washing your entire body, even on Yom Tov, irrespective of when the water was heated. And therefore so it's very interesting, right? You have on the one hand, Tosfos says that this is a Doraisa issue because it's not Shavel Achol Nefesh, right? The Rambam is more lenient. The Rambam says it's only a rabbinic issue. But on the other hand, the Rambam is telling us also a stringency. The Rambam is telling us that this rabbinic idea of the Gezeras Merchat, this rabbinic idea of the bathhouse prohibition applies even on Yom Tov, right? In Tosfos, we don't know that. We only know that in the Rambam. We don't know that in Tosfos. All right? That's the Rambam, and that's Tosfos. Now, there are two main significant ramifications of this dispute between the Rambam and the Tosfos. All right. One of them is the question of water that was heated from before Shabbos. All right, before Yom Tov. Excuse me. Is it mutter? Is it permitted to have a bath or a shower on Yom Tov using water that was heated before Yom Tov? All right, is that mutter or not? So we saw the Rambam says, yeah, the Rambam says Gezeras Merchat, right? Seems from the Rambam, no question. However, if you look at the Riss, and this is on page 3, right, the same Riss that we just saw a moment ago, The Rif says in the underlined part, "Ule'inyan v'chitza v'yom tov," right? V'chamin shehuchamu mei erev yom tov. Says the Rif, "Chazinon lego'oin de'kakosav hach de'kakosav hachi da'hi damrin lo yer chatzalom kol gusay b'Shabbos v'chamin shehuchamu mei erev Shabbos dafka b'Shabbos." Says the Rif, this gezerah that applies even to water that was heated up before Yom Tov or before Shabbos, this applies only on Shabbos. About the Yom Tov, but on Yom Tov, Shari Lirchait, Kol Gufay, Bechamin Shehuchamu, Me'erev Yom Tov. He says, if it's water that was heated up before Yom Tov, then it's fine. And it's interesting, the Ramban over here, they explain that this is because, it's very interesting, they explain that this is because we don't go like Tosfos. If we go like Tosfos, so this is the Doraisa problem of heating water on Yom Tov. And Yom Tov is really just like Shabbos, if you're doing your whole body. And if Yom Tov is just like Shabbos, then we'll have the full scope of this Gzeira D'Rabbanan, that you're not allowed to wash on Yom Tov, even with water that was heated before Yom Tov, because maybe you'll come to heating the water on Yom Tov. And heating the water on Yom Tov is a D'Oraisa prohibition based on Tosfos. However, if we don't go like Tosfos, but rather we say that the problem of heating water on Yom Tov is only a rabbinic prohibition, right? Meaning the Rambam's way, then there's room to distinguish. We can say that the whole prohibition, the whole rabbinic prohibition, is only for water that was heated on Yom Tov. But if the water was heated before Yom Tov, then Chazal didn't make this prohibition. And this is the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. All right, the Shulchan Aruch. This is on page 6.
I think the problem is because you might go to verify. What does it matter when the water is heated?
No, if the problem is that you might heat up the water on Yom Tov, again, over here, there's no, you're right. The problem over here is a general Gezeras Merchants. So that was extended. Chazal extended it from Shabbos to Yom Tov. But they only extended it partially. They didn't extend it all the way, even to water that was heated before. You're right that based on the Svara, like, who cares? But what the Rishonim are doing, they're saying, yeah, you know what? Okay, we see from this Hillel that there's some extension here of the Merchat's prohibition, but there's no reason to take it beyond the scope that we see. We see that it applies to water that's heated on Shabbos, that you mustn't heat up water on Shabbos. That's all we know. We don't know anything more than that. And therefore, there's no reason to extend it further because there's a substantive difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos. Shabbos, you're not allowed to heat up water. Yom Tov, you are allowed, at least on the D'Oraisa level, to heat up water. And therefore, there's no reason to extend it beyond that which we find. That's what the Ran here explains. And if we look at page 6, this is how the Shulchan Aruch rules. Right? The Shulchan Aruch says, Mutar lehachen b'Yom Tov mayim lirchotz yado. Right? Aval lo kol gufay afilu in the b'masachmas. All right, the Shulchan Aruch is ruling like we saw in the Mishnah, right? And like the Gemara explains, you're allowed to heat up water on Yom Tov to wash your hands, but you're not allowed to heat up the water for your entire body. However, said the Shulchan Aruch, look a little bit further down, it carries on halfway down the page. Aval, b'mayim shehuchamu me'erev Yom Tov, if the water was heated up from before Yom Tov, then mutar lirchotz kol gufay afilu ke'echad. Then you're allowed to wash your entire body. All right. He says, right? He's worried about using the merchatz. Right? Merchatz itself, that we don't know. There's some elements of a merchatz prohibition even on Yom Tov, and therefore going into the merchatz itself, that's no good. But if you're outside the merchatz, then you're okay. All right. So we see in the Shulchan Aruch that is taking on this merchatz prohibition, but only halfway. All right, you shouldn't go into the merchatz itself, and that's also why, presumably, you're not allowed to heat up water for your entire body. But if the water was heated up before Yom Tov, then you're okay. Now the Ramah disagrees, right? The Ramah, which is right here, the Ramah says the some prohibit entirely. And who are these poskim that prohibit? The Torah and the Rosh, meaning the Tosfos-based poskim. Tosfos-based poskim, they prohibit even washing on Yom Tov with water that was heated up before Yom Tov. Because according to Tosfos, the problem of Yom Tov is the same as Shabbos. According to Tosfos, heating up water for the purpose of washing your entire body is a d'oraisa prohibition because it's not Shabbos l'chol nefesh. And if it's a d'oraisa prohibition, then the full stringency of the Gzeras Merchatz, just like we find on Shabbos, that you're not allowed to wash your entire body with hot water, even if it's from before Shabbos, called the Gzeras Merchatz. It's an extended Gzeras Merchatz. It's the full scope. So that full scope should apply even on Yom Tov. All right, and that's what we find in the Ramah. I'd like to point something out here that I have difficulty with, and that's the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says in Sifkot on Yud, he says, Avaloi kol glufoi, he says, Pirush, lachimayim b'nei rechitzas kol glufoi, says the Mishnah Berurah, the rechitzas kol glufoi, hu davar she'ein shabbat l'chol nefesh. Rak le'mu'unagim ha'regilim bazeh. So the Mishnah Berurah says, in explaining the Shulchan Aruch, right? He's not explaining the Ramah. He's explaining the Shulchan Aruch, and he says, even in explaining the Shulchan Aruch, that the problem is that it's not Shavah l'chol nefesh. I have a little bit of a problem with that, because if you do it with this, meaning you do not like the Rif, right? So the Rif doesn't agree to this, right? And the Rambam doesn't agree to this, right? The Rambam says only rabbinic, right? So the Mishnah Berurah is putting the Shulchan Aruch together with Tosfos and not like the Rambam. I think that's very, very difficult, because if you do that, then why is the Shulchan Aruch being matir, washing your entire body if the water was heated before Yom Tov? That's going like the Rishonim who say it's only rabbinic and not like Tosfos, like the Ran and the Ramban, and they're explaining the Rambam and so on. So I think it's pretty clear that the Shulchan Aruch is going like the Rambam. And that's why I find this Mishnah Berurah being very difficult in explaining the Tosfos.
It's still willing to make a distinction between Shabbos and Yom Tov, even though it's d'oraisa.
That's why I'm saying it's very difficult. It's very difficult. If you look downstairs in the Sharat Tziyoi, right, it says, "Who sheet as a Tosfos? If you're writing the Vem in Yerushalmi, that's a Rambam by Goin and Dumin Rabbanim." Right, so obviously the Sharat Tziyoi and the Mishnah Berurah is aware of this machlokes. But to explain the Shulchan Aruch based on Tosfos, I think is very difficult. And also based on the Beis Yosef brings the Rambam and brings the Rishonim and brings the Rif. And as we know, the Beis Yosef usually paskins like, the big three, the Rosh, the Rif, and the Rambam. But here we have the Rif and the Rambam, that it's the Rabbanon. So even if you have the Rosh like this, like it's the rest, so it stands to reason that the Shulchan Aruch is paskining like the Rambam. So I find this Mishnah Berurah difficult. Al-Qaponim. All right, so that's one important ramification.
What's the idea that was heated on Shabbos or before Shabbos? The person, but what if it happens from solar?
If it happens from solar, then if it happens from solar, then many poskim, Shlomo Zalman and others, say that it's considered like it was heated before Shabbos. And then if it's on Shabbos, it would still be a problem. But if it's on Yom Tov, then according to the Shulchan Aruch, then it's fine. According to the Ramah, like we saw, it's still a problem. But soon we'll see that even this is not so simple. But yeah, Shabbos law or solar and so on would be like before Shabbos.
Yeah. Mishnah Berurah seems to make a clue in Yeshua to justify his distinction between the Ramah and the Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah, but it's very not clear that.
I agree, but he seems to be saying that even if you hold like the Tosfos for the Shulchan Aruch, it's still, I don't know why he says you have to have the Shulchan Aruch holding the Tosfos, but he still seems to be saying from this one you can see that In the Shulchan Aruch, when he's saying they can still make a chiluk as far as extending the zera is concerned.
That's absolutely true. He says in the Ramah that there's no difference, and there is a difference, but it goes unexplained. It goes unexplained. And it also doesn't stand to reason in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch, I think, is clearly like the Ramah. Anyway,
Why is it not complete?
the
It's
Mishnah
strange as to why the Mishnah Berurah has to say it.
in Shulchan Aruch.
No, there's a reason to say it.
The truth is, I don't think he has a reason for this. But I think it's convenient to bring the image of a Nefesh because it's.
He has machlokas here on the page.
No, but it's convenient because it's also the more stringent version. Mishnah has a tendency towards bringing the more machmir opinion, and according to the Tisha, it will tell that it's the Raisa. And he's busy with this later on. Hey, it's the Raisa. The Mishnah, for example, has a question. The Shulchan Aruch says. Alright, so the Mishnah, what does it mean no kol gufay? What about if I only want to wash my shoulder? I want to wash my stomach. Okay, I want to wash my back. I want to wash something. Is that okay? Or is it only part of yadav raglav? Right? Is it only your face and your feet and your hands, but nothing else? So Mishnah has a problem with this. And he says, no. Kol gufay. No, it's not. Yeah, it's in the Biur Nachman. Sorry, it's in the Biur Nachman. I'm Mishabur, right? And then he says, well, the fees there. He said, I'm just skipping a bit. He said, the fees there. Who are in afle eiver echad? Any limb, the stomach, your back, anything. Chutz mipan of yadav raglav also. He says, and I have a proof of this. And then he says at the end of the Biur Halacha, he says, right, skip to the next part, the second half of the page. He says, well, it's like halfway into the Biur Halacha in the second half of the page. It says, because the Biur Halacha right? So in the hakel, meaning he's busy with the Tosfos that it's a doraisa here, and that's why I think he brings it in the Mishabur because he wants to, as it were, to put this out there, to put this on the table. That this is a doraisa issue. Even though according to the Shulchan Aruch, I think it's very clearly not a doraisa issue. He goes with the Rambam and the Rif, it's a Rabbanan issue, but the Mishabur wants us to be clear that we're treating this as a doraisa issue. You see you see the tension here. You see the inclination, the disposition of the Mishnah Berurah to say it's not Shabbos and Yom Tov, and therefore it's a doraisa issue. So that's one issue. What happens if you have water that was heated up from before Yom Tov? But another issue, and this is obviously a very big issue, is how do we look at this nowadays? All right. Because nowadays, it's not only the spoiled and finicky people who are taking showers, even normal people take showers often. So we do, I don't know about you guys, but we take showers pretty often. It's very normal. And in the winter, you might skip a day or something. But generally speaking, if you're tired, you come back late, you can fall into bed. Happens, it's okay. But, generally speaking, we take showers every day. It's like the most normal thing. You jump in the shower, you feel good. Meaning that which in the times of Chazal, and I guess in the times of Tosfos, was something that was only done by very finicky people. Nowadays, it's clearly done by everybody, frequently, every day. Someone who doesn't do it will be looked upon as being strange at best. And therefore, the question is now, does the halacha change? Because today it's Shabbos l'chol nefesh. Today it's normal. So what would change? Right, this is the question now. But what would change? Based on Tosfos, who hold it d'oraisa, today would be mutter. Right? Meaning Tosfos who are more stringent and say that the problem of washing water, of heating water on Yom Tov is a d'oraisa problem because it's not Shabbos l'chol nefesh, but nowadays it would be mutter. There's no problem at all. However, based on the Rambam, right? And there's Rishonim that say it's the Rabbanon. So according to them, it seems that this is not going to help. Because even if you say that it's Shabbos l'chol nefesh, nonetheless, you still have this rabbinic problem of Gzeras Merchatz. Right? You still have this Gzeras Merchatz.
Why is that there when we talk about it? Maybe it's because at the end of the day you might heat it up. And today you're allowed to heat it up because
Well,
it works.
well, again, you see, you can't say that. And the reason why you can't say that is, and the Rishonim are busy with this, the Rambam explains in the Das Rambam. You see, in Beis Hillel say that you're allowed to heat the water to the degree of your washing your feet. But more than that is forbidden. Why is more than that forbidden? According to Tosfos, because it's not Shabbos l'chol nefesh. But the Rambam says no. It's midoraisa, it's mutter. It's only midrabanan also. So you see in the Rambam that even though there's no doraisa prohibition of heating up the water, nonetheless there's still a rabbinic prohibition. You're right that according to many Rishonim, that rabbinic prohibition doesn't extend to water that was heated up before Yom Tov. It's only water that was heated up on Yom Tov. But for water that's heated up on Yom Tov, you see that the Rambam holds that prohibition exists, midrabanan, even though there's no deraisa issue. And the Rambam makes a real point of this in Shabbos Tafmem. He said, what's going on here? Like you said, and there's no deraisa. What does the Rabbanan do? He said, yeah.
What's the difference between Shabbos when it's heated up if there's no deraisa? What's the difference according to the Rambam?
Because, like I said, because Chazal extended the Merchatz Zera to heating water to water that's heated on Yom Tov. So according to the Rambam, we still have a problem. And we were so happy to say the Shulchan Aruch is like the Rambam, but now we're not so happy anymore. Because if Shulchan Aruch is like the Rambam, that means that we have a big problem of taking showers on Yom Tov with water that's heated on Yom Tov. Water that's heated before Yom Tov, we're in a better position now. Okay, why are we in a better position? Because what is Shulchan Aruch? It's anyway better, right? Water that was heated before. And even according to Tosfos, so there's strong room to say that nowadays, because even on Yom Tov itself, it's mutter, so then you wouldn't have this extended zera of merchatzais, even though the Ramah says, yes, oishu b'chol inyan, but that's based on the Tosfos that you have a doraisa prohibition on Yom Tov, because it's not Shabbos l'chol nefesh. Nowadays, that you're all good, stands to reason that this is not going to be a problem. However, now that we have the Rambam, right, and the Tosfos and the Shulchan Aruch passing like the Rambam, so this would seem to be a real problem, and we can't prove that the Ramah doesn't agree that there's a Gzeras Merchatz like the Rambam. The Ramah holds is even more, but we can't prove that the Ramah is going to be maker in this case. That's impossible to prove. We don't know. You never know. But we can't prove that. So we have a real problem here. Are we going to be able to take our showers on Yom Tov, right, with water that's heated on Yom Tov, right? Is this going to be a problem or not? So, first of all, let's talk about showers on Yom Tov with water that was heated up before Yom Tov. All right, this is the Ramah. The Ramah says it's a problem. All right, is this really such a problem or not? The answer is, well, not such a problem. Why is it not such a problem? Because we already saw, if you remember last week, we already saw that taking a shower in cold water, right, is permitted. You remember that? Even on Shabbos. Now, what about taking a hot shower on Shabbos? Well, we saw that on the one hand, it's also, right? We saw that it's also. But we did see Rabbi Akiva Eiger on page 3, right? Remember this. Rabbi Akiva Eiger on page 3, who explains why sometimes you will have to take a shower, even with warm or hot water on Shabbos. And he says, you know what? He says, look at the Rabbi Akiva Eiger on the side. He says, Mashma de mitzvah mutar lechoitz. Afilu gufay b'chamin. If you're uncomfortable, right? If you're feeling discomfort, then you're allowed to wash your body, even your entire body, with hamming, with hot water. Erev Shabbos, right? This is Shabbos. This is not like regular rabbinic prohibitions. Right, but it's only Xeris Balanim, it's this Merchatz prohibition. You're not going into the Merchatz here. You're at home, you're taking a shower, alright. And more than that, we could say more than that. Why more than that? Because the prohibition of Xeris Merchatz is referring to someone who takes a bath. Does it also apply to someone who takes a shower? Well, it's a whole sugya. The Gemara itself speaks about this. In Shabbos there, Daf Mem. However, the Gemara is referring to the Merchatz itself. Well, what about taking a shower at home? That we don't have anything very clear about, and therefore we have reasonable grounds to be makel for someone who is mitztaer, meaning someone who's sweaty and hot, and on a summer's day and he's sticky, right? We have reasonable grounds to be makel for someone who's mitztaer, certainly for water that was heated before Yom Tov, because that's just like Shabbos, right? Just like Rabbi Kiva says that there's room to be makel. Kal v'chomer, when it comes to Yom Tov, that we see that the Xeris Merchatz of Yom Tov is less than on Shabbos, there's room to be makel, certainly for someone who feels discomfort, right? Certainly for someone who is feeling a discomfort for taking a shower on Yom Tov. We also saw last week concerning the question of going to the mikveh, right? Do you remember going to a cold mikveh and hot mikveh? We spoke about this last week. And we saw there also, again, some are mikveh there because it's a bar mitzvah, all right? But many also rely on this Rabbi Kiva when there's a significant sorech, right? When you need it, then there's room to be makel. But beyond that, right? If we're makel for a case of someone who's hot and sweaty, if we're makel for someone who's hot and sweaty to take a shower with water that was heated before Yom Tov, so for the Yom Tov case, this would apply even to water that was heated on Yom Tov itself, right? Because like we said, nowadays, we're in a position that heating water is shavel l'chol nefesh. Taking showers is shavel l'chol nefesh, meaning it's something which is universal. Everyone takes pleasure in a good shower. It's normal. It's not something which is only for finicky spoiled people. By the way, person speak about smoking. Is smoking shavel l'chol nefesh? But since it's anyway also to smoke, won't get it. But in the case of showers on Yom Tov, so now, if we're going to be makel to take a shower for someone who's hot and sticky for water that was heated before Yom Tov, so it seems that there's no reason to be machmir even for water that's heated on Yom Tov itself, right? And what does that mean? That means that if you have a heating system that doesn't involve some kind of an Isra on Yom Tov, all right? One has to be careful with this because it depends very much on what kind of a heating system you have at home, whether this will be mutter on Yom Tov or not, right, to heat up the water. But let's say you're heating up the water in a way that's mutter on Yom Tov, right, that is not an Isra Havara, that there's no prohibition going on Yom Tov itself, then you'd be able to take a shower even with water that was heated up on Yom Tov. For our Dun Shemesh business, right, which is even on Shabbos, it's not a proper prohibition, on Yom Tov, that there's a lot of grounds to be makel. Now, are poskim actually makel on this? Well, not so simple. If you look, for example, at Rabbi Yosef, right, page 9. Page 9 is Rabbi Yosef. And he says, look at this, it's very nice. First of all, he's Rambam Day, and he holds the Shulchan Aruch like the Rambam, right? And therefore he starts off, it's the Yud base. You see letter Yud base? Focus Yom Tov. Hana'ah ha'shavah l'chol nefesh. Muteret b'Yom Tov ka'echol nefesh atzmei. Right? Oh, 1 minute, it's not so clear. Well, first of all, he's Rambam Day, right? ולכן מותר לעשות מדורה להתחמם כנגדה בזמן הקור, right? וכולי, that's the Shulchan Aruch says that. Mitam Zeh, he says, Mutter Gamke and the Chamim Mayim Chamim Yilchot Ben Pana the other Rango. Then he says, Amal Kdei Lechot Kol Gufay Aser. Very interesting. He says the Chol Gufay Aser, and this is surprising, right? He said the Chol Gufay Aser. Why? But it's not Hana Shabbos L'Chol Nefesh. He says, not like the. This is interesting. Let's see what he says in Ayin. He says in Ayin, let's see. The Torah Shulchan Aruch. Again, this is talking about heating the water. This is talking about heating the water. So this is true, but he explains the Shulchan Aruch also like Tosfos. Very interesting. Then he says, look, he says, Ma'im Shulchan, let's just finish the text inside. He says, Ma'im Shulchan, B'dut Shemesh, Mutali Trachet Ben Kol Gufay B'Yom Tov. If the water was heated in the Dut Shemesh, then you can take a full shower with it, or a full bath, meaning like the Shulchan Aruch and not like the Ramah. All right. What does he say in Ayin? He says the Tam Shabbos from him at Tosfos. He really says that he's relying on the Tosfos. And then he says that he saw one of the great Rabbanu Italia, that he said that it's mutter but only for specific reasons. Very interesting. Okay, very interesting. Also, Chazon Evangel, which is Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, also goes with Tosfos. I think it's very interesting. In the next one, in Ein Gimel, he says that this is only in your home and not outside your home. Very interesting. So even Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef or Chazon Evangel, even he goes with Tosfos. And he doesn't say what we said, that nowadays is different. All right? Very interesting. Shmir Shabbos Gil Chasel, page 10. All right? If you look down at the note, and we don't have time to do much, but look at the note, Chof Aleph. Okay? Page 10, and there's a note, Chof Aleph. And then he says, you know what? He says he doesn't know what's going on nowadays, right? He says, right? But he says, 1 second. Or לפחות מקלחת, those people at least have a shower. Why should we prohibit Rechitzas Kol HaGuf? Right? What's the problem? But he finishes off and he says the tzarech here. All right? And he doesn't say, and therefore it's mutter. He says, and therefore tzarech here. Right? And there's other question here. So, bottom line, it's very clear that nowadays this should be Shabbos L'Chol Nefesh, and that should have significant ramifications for what you're allowed to do on Yom Tov, meaning that you should be allowed to take showers on Yom Tov, provided that you're not, lighting a match or doing a prohibition that even on Yom Tov would be problematic. At the same time, it's important to note that Shmer Shabbos Gil Chas and other question don't go all the way in saying that it's mutter. I spoke about this to Rav Shabbos a number of times, and he said this: if it's a case where you're tired, where you're sweaty, 2-day Yom Tov, for example, 3-day Yom Tov if you're in Chutz La'aretz, then yesh lahakel, right? Today nowadays it's Shabbos L'Chol Nefesh. What do we have? The Durabanan of Gzeres Merchatz, the Durabanan of Gzeres Merchatz. Even that form its style, we see like Rabbi Kiva that it's mutter. So yalla, yesh lahakel. However, if you're just doing it for your leisure and for your pleasure, then you should wait for Motzei Yom Tov. All right.